We are just days away from the NFL draft. Whose dreams will be coming true, and how can we, as fantasy football managers and gamblers, capitalize on the momentum? We're going to tell you all this and more in our 2023 NFL mock draft.
Cause I've been in tune, out of touch, coming off the bench, trying to shake the fun, check your stat line, see who's up, that over under hit too clutch.
And I'm trying to avoid getting carried away with the jet sweep, sleeping on a trick play, predicting all of my moves like they seen every play. And so I'm running it back, head down, get out of my way. And it's for the law with only one thing to do. I guess I'll say a prayer and put it all on the line for you. What they don't know, something they haven't seen. I find a gap on the screen and hit them right in between. Yeah, I got it, and I got it.
Just one thing to say, yeah, what they don't know, something they haven't seen. I'm off that mean Joe Green, it got me fading between. Yeah, I got it, and I got it. The In Between Fantasy Football Podcast.
All right. It is April 18th, 2023. The In Between Fantasy Football Podcast is back here with you for maybe our most electrifying program of the year. Yes, it is our 2023 NFL mock draft. I am Seth Woolcock. I am joined by two of the greatest thought leaders in this fantasy football industry, Nate Polvo and Scott Reinier. And tonight we are accompanied by a man who starred in Blossom and also appeared in the likes of The Dark Knight, Beverly Hills 90210, and Prison Break. God, do I fucking love Prison Break, guys. Give it up for Michael Stoyanov. Mike, how you doing tonight, my friend?
Good. Thanks for giving me props for the 30-second scene I was in. And that show was a lot of fun, though, Prison Break. Definitely shot in Chicago, as I recall.
Okay, awesome. We appreciate you being back here with us, Mike. How are the vibes as we head towards the NFL draft, my friend?
How are the what?
How are the vibes?
Oh, I mean, I'm excited. I'm probably more tuned in to the draft than I have been in years past. So it's exciting to know this much about it. And it's definitely going to be a really good one. I'm excited. I like the fluctuate. It's truly like a draft day type scenario in that, I don't know what's going to happen, honestly, in that first 5 or 6 picks. If all those guys are going to stay there, are all those teams really? Is the Arizona Cardinals going to stay? There's going to be a lot of action. It's going to be great.
Absolutely. We are excited to talk all about it tonight and kind of predict what's going to happen. Nate, how are you doing tonight, my friend? I know it's been a busy time for you out there in crispy Colorado.
Well, it's the last nice day for weeks. I went on a hike, and dude, being 41 and trying to do a tough trail, I'm just so freaking glad that I get to sit during this show. Because if you were making me stand, there's a good chance I'd fall over at some point during the show. But I'm stoked to do this mock draft, man. There's, like Mike kind of alluded to, this is one of the maybe most volatile drafts I remember in recent memory, at least, where we already know so much is going to happen in the first 10 picks. Where's Bijan going to go? Are the Cardinals going to keep their pick? Where's Anthony Richardson land? There are just so many storylines here, and I'm stoked to kind of get into it. And maybe some NFL GMs are watching us, and they should probably take some notes on this draft.
Absolutely. And Scott, you were the star of our recent Pulp Fantasy here. Damn Sarnold, if I would. How are you doing tonight as we head towards the NFL draft and draft day? You're muted as well.
Uh-oh.
You're muted, Scott.
Swear we've done this before.
No,
I promise.
There he is.
I apologize to everybody. I'm having massive technical difficulties. I'm at a different angle. The background you have makes me think I'm in a cabin right now, but I'm not. But it looks like I am.
Same. I asked you before the show if that was just your house or where you were. It's very confusing, Scott.
That Pulp episode was a lot of fun. Thanks again, Mike, for joining us. But at the same time, we worked on it for quite some time, so it's also nice that it's over. You know how that goes. It was a relief when we were done.
Great job, man. Seriously, that was a lot.
It was so much fun, man. It was so much fun.
Well, guys, we are going to preview. I just want to give a shout out to Scott and Mike in one of the best scenes of this short film here. You can find the full thing on our YouTube. We do have our NFL mock draft right around the corner. But before that, a clip from draft day.
Let's do it. Hey, Dolly, bring me a Sierra Mist. You bring me a Sprite, you're fired. I'm not even joking. This guy, come on.
Hey, this is Dan Arnold.
Dan,
Panthers.
How are you, buddy? Don Scardino,
Is this
president
Don?
of player personnel for Dan Snyder and the Washington football team. Goddamn, no, the Commanders, and not Snyder, the new guys. You know what? Full disclosure, I'm not really solid on their names yet. It's a lot of turnaround over here.
Yeah, a lot has happened in the last couple weeks for you.
But I assure you, I am duly authorized to make deals. And do we have a deal for you, Dan?
You gotta love it. That was absolutely a great back and forth there. Mike, how does it
back hair, bro?
Low hanging fruit to make fun of the football team, the Commanders, and Snyder. That was easy pickings. But,
I think the funnest part for me was, we had our general kind of theme, but we didn't really have a script or anything. So I was hearing all that. I didn't know what Mike was
really
going to say.
okay.
And as you could see, I had kind of a S-eating grin the whole time because I was just trying to hold it together.
Mike, how is it to watch yourself back, whether it's in a clip like that or whether it's something out there in TV land forever? Is it weird for you, or have you grown to at least accept it?
I don't love watching myself. I'll be,
okay.
But, on certain stuff, it's just, I watch me and I'm like, I'm still acting. I'm still figuring stuff out. I'm still like, oh, that beat, or, oh, it should have been more subtle, or, but that was a lot of fun for sure. And that was not too bad. I like the front half better than the second half a little bit. So watching the front half was great. Perfect.
Awesome. We appreciate all your guys' hard work over here at IBT. We are rolling right now, and I want to welcome in the IBT family. We got Herms in the chat already. Good to see you, Herms. Appreciate the narrating in that video, man. We got HoovTube in the chat saying, what up, Buttercup? Albert, present as always. Good evening, IBT. Good evening to you, Albert. Thanks for making us part of it once again, our friend. And we got a shout out to all the theater kids out there from Dick Sickles. 100%.
Richard.
100%. We appreciate you, Dick, as well. Want to welcome in the IBT family as we go ahead and get towards our NFL mock draft here. If you guys are new to the channel, please subscribe if you want to continue to support us, and give us a thumbs up if you enjoy this type of content. And guys, let's go ahead and jump right into a little bit of news before we get to this mock draft. I didn't think it could wait until next week, so let's go ahead and address it in front and center.
Sometimes taking that first step out the door is the hardest thing to do. Give it a chance, you'll be begging for more. Save the spot just for you. We're all somewhere in between. How about you come to the place where you have some fun? Ain't gotta worry about knowing not what it means. Come and give me another, cause the night is young. At least I so thought.
This just in. Breaking news. Front and center.
All right, before we talk about some of the questionable things going around the NFL, let's talk about the good vibes, and that's Jalen Hurts secures a 5-year, $255 million deal for the kid who would not quit on himself, transferred schools, had an outstanding senior season at Oklahoma, and then came in and just continued to make the doubters wrong. And he's the highest paid now player on a yearly basis. Mike, how do you feel about this from a dynasty fantasy football standpoint? Does this uptick his value that he does have some long-term security here in what seems like a great Philadelphia Eagles team?
I don't think it would affect my opinion in dynasty. This was the assumption he's the guy. He's so great. And on that note, he deserves it in a reality sense. And anyone beefing about he's the highest paid, he's more than Mahomes. It's he's just simply the next guy up. In a few years, Joe Burrow is going to break this record probably. And then after that, Trevor Lawrence, there's going to be, and he definitely, I think, earned it on the field and played through the adversity at least the adversity of like the talk, you know what I mean? And like
Yes.
he proved the doubters wrong, and like he's great, and was right in line to be the MVP this year and took his team to the Super Bowl. So like I'd pay him, I'm pretty this is a pretty good decision, I think, all the way around.
Yeah, I 100% think it launches him into that top 3 or 4 dynasty quarterback discussion that we could have, right along with the Joe Burrows, the Patrick Mahomes, the Justin Herbert. I think he's in that tier. So excited to see what Jalen Hurts can do in 2023. Congrats to him, and hopefully it pays off for the Eagles here. Nate, I want to move to Pittsburgh Steelers, one of our favorite teams here. They're acquiring Allen Robinson for a 7th-round pick swap. Steelers are going to have to burn $5 million on his salary. The Rams are going to eat the other $10 million on the salary. What do you think of this? Because I've been on the A-Rob is washed for years train, but now like this is kind of a value play for the Steelers, isn't it?
I mean, it is, because you got the guy for a 7th-round pick. You're giving up almost nothing for a guy who, dude, he's not that far removed. He's will be 3 seasons removed from wide receiver 9 in 2020 in Chicago. He was a wide receiver 9 in PPR. Is he washed? Maybe. He's going into his 30th year. And that's kind of the cliff for wide receivers, but he also hasn't been used much the last 2 seasons. Fantasy relevancy, there's none there for me.
There's none there?
There's none there.
Does it bump Kenny up for you at all?
No. And it does. I'm already high on Kenny Pickett, higher than most. I think the kid's going to have.
Yes.
I think the kid's going to have a phenomenal 2023 season. I think he's going to get himself into that top 12 quarterback tier by the end of the season in Dynasty. But it doesn't matter if A-Rob's there or not. This is a depth piece for me and a veteran locker room piece. I think maybe it does help Pickett a little bit having that veteran receiver with experience, but he's got other players on that team with experience. So I don't know. I think it's a depth ad. I think it's a smart ad. It's a cheap ad for the Steelers. They're not spending cap money on that wide receiver 3. It doesn't affect George Pickens. That's for damn sure. I'm fine with it. I know there are people on Twitter who are, this is stupid, or, oh no, George Pickens value. Guys, it's not that big of a deal for fantasy. This is a football move. And as a football move, I love it for the Steelers. For fantasy, don't care.
Mike, are you hesitant at all to draft George Pickens or Deontay Johnson, who only had a whopping 0 touchdowns last season because of this news?
I would still take Pickens. I was not really looking at Johnson already, and I'm definitely Robinson. I do want to say though, I feel like Allen Robinson is one of like the great unsolved mysteries of what happened. Like he wasn't turning 30 3 years ago. He wasn't, he didn't have some like major injury. He just went to a team with a better QB and just stopped being good. Like what? Why? Why did that happen? How did that happen? It actually started the year before with Fields' rookie year, but he just suddenly was not good at being a wide receiver anymore after like top 10 year, like after several sort of like building the first 4 years of his career. So you're like, wow, this guy's got talent, and one of these years they'll put him somewhere and he'll be like explosively like, he was already playing great, but like, yeah, I just don't understand what happened to him. But I'd still draft Pickens.
Okay. Scott, how do you feel about Calvin Austin? Obviously a very talented wide receiver last season coming out of Memphis. I didn't really love the hype. I don't really always love the hype on some of these Memphis guys. Any thought that this derails any hope we had for him in a dynasty lens or a redraft lens?
I don't know. It's hard to tell with people like Austin where their trajectory is headed, regardless of this move. We don't have enough information yet. Where was Austin drafted? What round was he drafted?
I believe he was a 4th round pick.
Yeah, so he's, as far as draft capital goes, he's on the wrong side of it for wide receivers historically. I agree though. I don't think this sways the needle. I think this is a big fat nothing burger with extra nothing. I think it's a little bit interesting because Deontay Johnson, if his value is already pretty low because of last year, and I think he's going to be a lot better this year. I mean, I don't think he's going to be a top 12 guy, but he's not going to score 0 touchdowns again. And I still believe in George Pickens. So if this does drop their price a little bit, all the better, because it's not going to impact them in fantasy. It's just not. Mike brought up a good point, and Mike also gave me a good idea. I think maybe we'll spoof Unsolved Mysteries on the next fantasy. That sounds like a fun idea. But it is weird because was it last year that he was choosing between the Eagles and the Rams, and he went to the Rams and missed out on obviously a Super Bowl ring. So, but yeah, fantasy wise, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said. It's basically paying nothing for a guy, so there's no risk. From a real football standpoint, fantasy doesn't do anything for me.
Okay, let's go ahead and ask the NFL general manager of the Washington football team what it means from a fantasy standpoint that Josh Harris and Magic Johnson and company, they're going to be the new owners of the Washington Commanders. They just submitted a $6.05 million bid for that Washington franchise. There's obviously a lot has to happen. A new stadium. They need to address the shit that just piles out of the ceiling apparently at Commanders games. But Mike, in a short-term lens, a fantasy lens, does this mean anything? Are you higher on Commanders because Dan Snyder is out of the building and there might be some functionality in that franchise?
I mean, I think so. Like they were struggling through that whole era, and like they definitely, if nothing else, need a culture change. And I think, Magic Johnson is intriguing just because we know he's a winner, and like he brings that sort of energy to his endeavors. So like I think this is an overall uptick in terms of like certain players. I don't know, but I expect that the team will be very different looking in 2 or 3 years than it is today as a result of the change of ownership.
Yeah, okay. I'm intrigued because what is it? The process, his process, which is kind of a generic term, but somehow he got credit for coining it with tearing down a team and rebuilding. But he did it with the Sixers.
Rebuilding.
He did it with the Devils. I mean, he cleaned house. And I mean, to his credit, both those teams then became perennial, playoff teams, not championship teams, but playoff teams. But I'm curious if that's what's about to happen in the Capitol.
It definitely is.
If we're going to see that type of thing.
You got to tear it down. You have to.
So
this is a team they believed in Carson Wentz, for Christ's sake. Like, what's going on here?
We will see though, because I mean, it's not official. The owners still have to vote on it in May. Right, I think they need 75% approval from the owners for it to actually go through. Apparently there's a few other potential contenders that could still, but the likelihood now is it's this group, which as far as judging, it's going to be better than Dan Snyder. A kitchen broom somebody threw out of the dump is going to be better than Dan Snyder.
I would like to point out that M should be a B. He did not get them for $6.05 million.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, he got it is $1 billion. It is $1 billion. But this is
one of his claims to fame is he turned around one of the biggest private investments as far as how much he put in and how much he got out of it in the history of the world. So if he got the Commanders for $6.05 million. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to see. Maybe depending what happens in the draft, like maybe you will take your shot on Sam Howell, Terry McLaurin. Again, we'll get some fantasy love. We'll see how it all shakes out. I'm excited to see how it all shakes out, guys. Let's go ahead, though. Go ahead, Mike.
I'm just going to add one final thing is that I think they actually will be a team in the running for Caleb Williams. So, like, there's a change coming for that team. They
already have B. Robinson.
They do. So far, just a great listener. Really good kid. Nice guy.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and draft the next group of nice guys in our fantasy football NFL mock draft, that is, for 2023. And back in the day,
They ain't make them like this way back in the day. Took a shot, couldn't miss way back in the day. Couldn't predict how it could all change. Don't you ever forget how far we came. How far we came. Never forget how far we came. How far we came. Remember how it was way back in the day.
All right. And before we move to our mock draft, we want to look at the last 2 years of draft data as well, just to take away some lessons. We like this to be a learning type of show, as well as some hijinks and bullshit along the way. But let's look at 2021, because I think this more resembles what we're going to see this season with high-end quarterback prospects at the top of it. Obviously, like things panned out pretty well for the Jaguars, but like the rest of this top 10 list, like there are question marks here. Zach Wilson, obviously a question mark. Trey Lance, Jamar Chase, extremely great value at the number 5 pick. Kyle Pitts maybe a little bit high at 4. Scott, when you look at this board though, is there one takeaway that you have? Is it that you're fading some rookie quarterbacks after seeing Zach Wilson, Trey Lance 2 and 3, or is this a totally different class that you can't take anything away from this?
I try not to compare it that way, just because the most recent comparison we have is one quarterback going in the 20s and then nobody till the 3rd round. So that's kind of more fresh in my head. Obviously it didn't work out for the Jets. It's yet to be seen for the 49ers with Trey Lance. Trevor Lawrence, I think, is going to be that dude. So Justin Fields, I still think is going to be great. Mac Jones, nah. But yeah, I mean, I think from what I've seen so far, as far as the analysis and the mock drafts I've seen, and just kind of all the general consensus is, there's probably 4 quarterbacks that are definitely going to go in the first this year. And I think they all deserve to. You're muted.
God. Mike, any takeaways from you here on this board? Obviously, there are some great values here down in the end of this draft. Travis Etienne, Najee Harris, you name it. But obviously, like Alex Leatherwood cut after one season. Like there are a bunch of whiffs. So when we do our mock draft here in a couple minutes, is there anything you're taking away looking at the 2021 data?
I mean, there's just quarterbacks are at a premium, and like I think you gotta kind of roll the dice. Like I mentioned Caleb Williams a minute ago. I think you can't be like, there's a very few teams that are going to be in a position to tank, have the kind of team that is going to tank, and the kind of coach that'll be willing to tank. And like, we'll get into that. But I think Zach Wilson actually weirdly, like the comps are kind of Richardson-esque. In that, like, oh, look at that crazy bomb he made on the run. Like, well, I'm not. Look, we're gonna compare a lot of guys to a lot of guys, and I don't mean it's a dead on.
Right.
That like he had heat about like the freaky physical ability he had in like his pro day. They were like, look how he rolls out and throws the ball. Nothing. It's like so. Yeah, I mean it's a minefield, and I think Waddle was a good pick. Like the 2. Wide receivers back to back. That looks like it's working out. And Devontae also. And like, I'm also a believer in Fields, and like, there's going to be misses every year, but like, yeah, you just don't want to have too many. As a Chicago Bears fan, trust me, you do not want to have too many.
100%. Let's go ahead and pull this next mock draft up, actual draft data from 2022 as well. Nate, when thinking back to last year's draft, obviously a lot of smoke screens. We thought Malik Willis might be a top 5 to top 10 pick, and that did not happen at all. So looking at this data here, how do you feel about 2022? Looking at it here, obviously Trayvon Walker, maybe a little bit of a reach at the top as well.
It's interesting because this was a draft where defense was heavy at the front end versus most drafts we see a lot of offensive players taken.
Yes.
But if you look at the guys who have gone here, Stingley, Sauce Gardner, Aiden Hutchinson, Trayvon Walker might have been a little bit of a miss, but we've only had one season. We know Evan Neal's a fantastic offensive lineman. He's been great in New York. Drake London, if they can get him a damn quarterback, I mean, that feels like a great pick to me. But when I look at this draft, I think the one that sticks out to me is Aiden Hutchinson at 2 didn't disappoint. He didn't disappoint at all. And then you start getting into, you got Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Detroit taking Jameson Williams at 12, knowing he probably wasn't going to play much. The little bit that we saw of him last season, dude was phenomenal when he was on the field. He's a guy who can stretch the field. all in all, this was a pretty solid draft, I think, for both teams in the first round. There aren't a lot of guys where I'm looking at this draft where I'm like, yeah, no. I mean, Jahan Dotson didn't do quite as much as you would want for a 16th pick.
Injuries for sure led to that.
And QB woes.
And QB woes. And that's what I was going to say, Mike. Like, to be fair, look at what the Commanders were last season. A mix of Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke. And that's no knock on Taylor Heineke, but we know he's not a long-term starting quarterback in the NFL. Year 2 is going to, and I always say this about every draft. The first year, if these guys hit, great. Year 2 after the draft is where you start to figure out if these guys really are a bust or if maybe they are something in this league. And we also have to temper expectations because teams are taking players in the first round and not necessarily have the expectations that we have for them as fantasy managers or as fans.
Yeah, and I think a big takeaway from looking at this draft as well is we know what positions are at a premium here. It's the trenches. It's the offense and the defensive line. It's the perimeter players, wide receivers, and cornerbacks. You're not going to see probably a middle linebacker go in the first round of the 2023 NFL draft. So when you're looking at some of those prop bets out there, keep fading those linebackers because they're going to continue to fall down the board if they're not on the edge. So that's something I'm looking at. And overall, like, people are going to pay up for these big tackles here. Evan Neal, Akeem Akinwa, we kind of saw it all last season. So that's kind of my big takeaway here is I'm sure offensive line are going to go heavily early in this in this upcoming one. Mike, any final thoughts looking back here at what was really a fun 2022 draft? Everyone thought, Debo was going to be traded again, and then it ended up being A.J. Brown of all people.
I agree that there are definitely less misses, it looks like, in this draft than 21. I think that's partly a measure of a lot of offensive linemen and defensive players, and it's kind of harder. You don't, especially offensive linemen, you can't pronounce them to really be a bust after 1 year. Most of them, even the very top, most ballyhooed ones are like, you're going to be training basically for a couple years. And, but this was a strong draft. I think I'm pretty impressed with the high paid NFL experts that they did their job this year for sure. It looks like to me.
Yes, sir. And the Steelers might have got the best pick of all, baby. Kenny Pickett. Let's go.
Seth, you're right. This year, there could easily be more tight ends selected in the first round than linebackers.
Yes.
I think that's a solid bet.
I'd love that prop bet out there. That would be great. I love that, Scott. Guys, let's go ahead and jump into the 2023 version of this. We're going to start out here with Mike. You are on the clock for the Carolina Panthers here. Obviously, we've seen some dramatic odd shifts. A couple weeks ago, CJ Stroud was minus 280 to go number 1 overall. I hammered down on it, boys, because I honestly only thought like that would get to where it is now for Bryce Young at minus 1,300. So odds have shifted. Bryce is now the heavy favorite to go number 1 overall. Is that a smokescreen, Mike? Should we maybe throw a little coin on Stroud to go 1 at plus 800?
That's a crazy smokescreen. It's negative 1,400, right?
Yes.
And the next guy is plus 600.
Yes.
If you want to bet Stroud. No, that is not smokescreen. No way. There's something going on. They've made their choice. It's leaking. I'll be shocked at this point, and clearly so will Las Vegas if it's not Young. You know what I mean? So
yes,
we're gonna get into this order. Like, truth be told, full disclosure. I had originally selected Stroud.
Yes,
and then in the pre-show we rapped about it, and I was like, Seth was like, if you had the opportunity, would you switch? And I was like, well, I was aware that Young had crept back up to number 1. And even yesterday when we did the draft, but yeah, then, I went and saw Air and I got inspired. The high upside, sort of go for greatness mentality. And I think that's what it's boiling down to is Young is more likely to be great. They're both really, really good. I think that tier between Stroud and Young, that is tighter than Richardson and Levis in sort of the next tier. So I just think, when you're the 1 pick, you've got to go for that greatness, like Hall of Fame potential upside. And that's clear that's Young. Like, these guys, like I said, they're high paid. And, it's clear that the NFL has arrived, or at least the Carolina Panthers, at the conclusion that the guy to pick is Young. And I don't disagree with that. And again, Stroud is great. Schefter's saying that no one like 2 and 3 are not going to take QBs. So the Colts
that feels like some malarkey right there.
I mean, Richardson, and again, in that situation, I think you take Stroud like that. He's, but yeah, so that's it. That's all I got to say on it. I'm a young man at this point. Not a young man, but a Bryce Young man.
All right. Mike's going back to the future there with his first pick, Bryce Young. Nate, is to you here. Do the Texans really pass on a quarterback, or is that a load of bullshit? Is it lying season already?
Did lying season ever end with NFL executives? No, it didn't. They're either taking Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. Whoever isn't taken with the first pick is going to the Texans, and it's CJ Stroud. It's going to be CJ Stroud. And I don't think there's too much more to discuss about it. They need a quarterback. My Davis Mills shares in Dynasty hope they don't take a quarterback, but they're taking a quarterback. It's going to be CJ Stroud.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
Nate had all the Davis Mills. He was taking them in all the drafts I had with you, even the Dynasty ones last year. So yeah, Nate, you're going to have to. Oh, you're a sick bastard, Nate. Scott, we're going to you with the third overall pick here. Do the Cardinals trade out, or do they stay put and draft potentially a generational talent on the defensive side?
Yeah, see, so for this one, I was talking to Mike about this a little bit, actually. I got a little lazy. You gave us the opportunity to make trades in this mock draft. And it would have actually made a lot of sense for me to trade with myself because I was also picking for Tennessee at number 11. But I went ahead and, I really, personally, honestly, I don't know. That is what is exciting to me about this draft is even with the first two picks, you know who the first two picks are going to be, but you don't quite know which one's going first. So there's some intrigue there. Then when it gets to 3, the Cardinals' phone could be ringing off the hook, or if they pick, then, arguably the best player in this draft, but they don't need a QB, is Will Anderson. And that's what I think they do if they don't trade. But there's multiple teams that could potentially trade up to that number 3 spot. Tennessee Titans being one of them.
Okay. All right. So he's going with Will Anderson. I'm on the clock for the Indianapolis Colts at 4, and I think this fell right into their lap. I'm going to go ahead and select Anthony Richardson out of Florida. And there are some smoke screens coming out of Indy now. They're saying, hey, maybe they don't want a quarterback. Maybe they are potentially even targeting Will Levis at the 4th overall pick. However, I hammered down on plus 200 Anthony Richardson a couple weeks ago to go to the Colts. I'm going to stand by that selection here. And this just fits what Shane Steichen wants to do here. He helped Jalen Hurts get that bag because he put an offensive around a mobile quarterback. And also the quarterback coach, Cam Turner, he comes from Arizona, who worked with Kyler Murray, another mobile quarterback. So I think they're putting the pieces in place that if Anthony Richardson does fall to 4, they can build around him. And I'm just excited to see what they can do. Obviously, they're going to let Jonathan Taylor carry the load here in his rookie year. Hopefully, Shaq Leonard and that defense can get back into form. But Jim Irsay, guys, he's a wild card. Dude is best friends with all these musicians, possibly doing some inappropriate things in Josh McDaniel's bathroom, allegedly. We don't really know. But he's a wild card. This is a wild card type of move. So I'm going to hammer down Anthony Richardson here to the Colts.
I think this is probably the direction they go. As much as I like Will Levis, and I think he's climbed on a lot of teams' boards, Anthony Richardson is this freak athlete, right? And isn't that what you want? Because that gives you the biggest ceiling. He gives you that rush side, and he's smart. And if he can learn an offense and kind of hone in that accuracy, this might be the steal of the draft, getting Richardson here at 4.
And they have Gardner Minshew, so they don't need to start him right away either. We might get a little Minshew mania early in the season. Mike, it's back to you with the Seattle Seahawks, who this isn't even their pick, man. They had a great season. This kind of a luxury pick for them, picking for the Denver Broncos.
Right. And I did take Levis. I know that's not super popular, but I feel like they're going to need a quarterback potentially sooner rather than later. I think Geno Smith is an amazing story. He had a great year. He is 32. We don't know if he gets figured out or he returns to more where his baseline stats have been the rest of his career. One way or another, they're going to need a quarterback. And unlike a lot of these teams that we've already been talking about, they are not going to be in the running for Caleb Williams. They're too good. And Pete Carroll will never tank. Like, it's just never going to happen. So they're not going to get the guy next year. So I think they have to roll the dice, hope they can. It's a great situation again, same as Richardson. He can learn. Geno Smith hopefully will be a great mentor and like can get him to another level or two. But physically, he could be very, very good. And I think you can't, in their situation, pass on him, even though he probably will go 10 spots later in the real draft. But
I love Will Levis, man. I mean, I get that, like, he obviously does some questionable things. He's putting mayonnaise in coffee and eating bananas with a peel on. But at the end of the day, this guy has the tool bag to be a possible NFL starter. And like, I just see him walk away from Penn State and we got Sean Clifford for 2 more years. Like, that is heartbreaking enough. So I don't mind the Seahawks. I would be very happy with this landing spot.
Just gonna hope he's Nuke Lelouch from Bull Durham, just kind of a oddball that but with $1 million arm, with $100 million arm. You know?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we'll see what Will Levis can do. I would love it, though, long-term for DK Metcalf. I mean, he's got a cannon. Well, he even said it in the combine, man. When you got a cannon like me, you want to go out there and throw. So
that's one of the troubling things. He says things like that out loud. Like, that's where you're like, oh, this guy, is this a huge mistake? But, fingers crossed that he works out.
Okay. All right, Nate, it is over to you with the Detroit Lions. Also a luxury pick for them, picking for the Rams, who had just a woeful season. Where do the Detroit Lions go with this number overall 6 pick?
Well, we talked about it before the show. At least Mike and I talked about it a little bit, that, like you said, this is a luxury pick. And this isn't a team that needs anything offensively. They've got their running backs. They've got their quarterback for now. Maybe they go quarterback either with a later pick, take a stab at one of Stetson Bennett or a Max Duggan, but more than likely they're looking quarterback next season. Goff played well. Their wide receivers are set. Their running backs are set. Their offensive line was much improved. But where they can get better and where they will get better here is with cornerback Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois. I don't know. I mean, between him and Christian Gonzalez, it's kind of like a toss-up as to who's the best corner in this class. Gonzalez is the best cover corner in man. Witherspoon's a fantastic zone corner, also very good in man coverage. But this is a place where this could be something that bumps them up in their division. This could be one of those moves where we look back and it's a Sauce Gardner type move for that Jets defense where, wow, we had no idea how much of an impact player he was going to be for that defense and that team. It was the best pick they could have made last year. And I think that's what we're going to look at with the Lions here is getting Witherspoon. And if you play IDP format, this is a guy that's probably going very early in your rookie drafts. He's coming off the board in the first round more than likely.
Woo, dude.
In IDP, that's not crazy. But Witherspoon's talented. He is incredibly talented, and all he's going to do is make their defense, make the Lions defense better.
6'2"? Is he the big one? Between the two of them is one of them is like 6'2", 6'3". Like that's an asset.
Yeah.
I think overall, too, if we've learned anything the last couple of years, it's that cornerbacks are valued here. Sauce Gardner went 4th last season. Derek Stingley Jr. maybe questionably went over Sauce at number 3 to Houston. And the year before, we saw the same thing. Patrick Surtain, he went over Justin Fields. J.C. Horn went to the Carolina Panthers when they needed a quarterback. So these cornerbacks are very valued in the NFL. I like that pick, Nate. Scott, we're going to go to you with the Raiders, who Will Levis, they're probably a little bummed out that he didn't fall to them. It looks like it's Jimmy G for a couple more years for the Raiders here.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, they're one of the teams I'd say it's not out of the realm of possibility that they would trade up. I would say the same thing, honestly, for the Lions. I agree about Goff and I agree about their offense, but I feel like the first 10 picks of this draft are going to be super exciting. So for me, with this, these 2 picks, Nate's pick with the Lions and mine with the Raiders, they get a little more interesting depending on what Seattle does. If Seattle does go QB and they don't take Tyree Wilson, a lot of the mocks have them taking Tyree Wilson. Then all of a sudden Tyree Wilson's sitting there. But I think the Raiders are still going to go cornerback, and I think they're going to go Christian Gonzalez. I think that's the cornerback they wanted anyway, so I think they'd be happy to see Witherspoon go. I mean, I think they would be fine with either, but I think Christian Gonzalez is their guy. I will say you can find cornerbacks later in the draft. Shout out to Tariq Woolen. But it's a little bit painful to let Tyree Wilson fall. But I think that the Raiders would stick to the cornerback position here. And then the very next team after me will be like, thank you very much.
Yes, 100%. So I'm going to go with the Atlanta Falcons here, selecting Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech. And look, I get that a lot of people are probably bummed out. They probably thought, oh, maybe Bijan Robinson would land here. They're becoming the odds-on favorite to draft Bijan here with this number 8 overall pick. And I get that they could do that, but I think they want to win with defense. They are building something over there on the defensive side of the ball in Atlanta. They signed Jesse Bates in free agency, a great move for their secondary. They just got Jeff Okudah for scraps from the Lions.
Yep.
Bud Dupree just signed last week with them as well. And Calais Campbell, one of the top defensive linemen in the league. He is a little bit older, but he's still an absolute dog, is on that defensive line. Add Tyree Wilson to the mix, a 6'6", 275 guy, top 10 in sacks in the Big 12 the last few years. And I think he could have honestly pushed Will Anderson Jr. for that number 1 defensive selection. However, he got hurt in pre-draft, had the foot injury. So I think that will land him right here at number 8. I'm excited to target the Atlanta Falcons possibly in fantasy as well, depending on the early season schedule. If they get Carolina with a rookie or the Saints week 1 and 2, I'm going to be all about them and try and take a little bit of a flyer on them as my fantasy defense. So, Mike, back to you here at number 9.
Sure. Well, I know a lot of people have the Bears taking Skoronski, I think, or at least best offensive lineman available. But in this world, they are going to sign Jonah Williams from the Bengals.
Ooh, okay.
That freed me
see
up.
that. I can
and
see
then they're
that.
also probably going to take Bergeron in the second round. So, like, they have plans for offensive line, which freed me up to take a risk on a physical freak and, like, a potentially great player who, like, I mean, in a much more serious manner, like in a Randy Moss type situation, he's fallen due to the off-field situation. And, like, you just got to hope, I feel like at 9, that, like, he's a good kid. Something unfortunate and terrible happened and he feels bad and he's going to move on. And, like, his priority, you got to hope it is football and, like, dedicating himself to it. And, like, I think it's not crazy. And I think that whoever ends up with Carter, it'll probably work out. Like, I bend towards believing people are generally good rather than, like, shitty. So
yeah,
Carter here, I felt like he was a value at, like, if that event never happens, he's gone. Like, 3.
He's the third pick.
Right. So and they definitely need that guy. They need help on their defensive line. So I took him.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see what the prop number is for him because we know Drew Rosenhaus came out last week and said he's not meeting with any teams outside of the top 10. He will go to Philadelphia at 10 if he is there. However, he is not there, Nate. So you are now up for the Eagles. And Howie Roseman, once again, just is an absolute dog. He has the number 10 pick here from the Saints, another luxury pick for a team that was just at the Super Bowl, but they didn't have the juice to get it done. Who do they get to here that could maybe help them get it done next season, my friend?
So I wouldn't have mocked this if they had kept Miles Sanders around, which I thought there was a chance that they would. But once Miles Sanders left in free agency, it became pretty clear because this isn't a team that has any, like, real glaring needs on either side of the ball. They do need to address corners because they let some of their secondary go in free agency. But, dude, Bijan Robinson, can you imagine? You get this dynamic running back who he has that, like, Barry Sanders skill set, the way that he moves through, like, the first and second tier once he gets past the line of scrimmage. And I'm not saying he's going to be Barry Sanders, just to be very clear. No one will ever be Barry Sanders. But you add that dynamic running back to an offense where they've been relying on Jalen Hurts to kind of carry that running game. And if you cannot rely on Jalen Hurts to run the ball as often, you get Bijan Robinson in that offense. Who is going to beat Philadelphia in the NFC? Who? Nobody. This is a team that could go 16-1 this season if they get Bijan. I feel like he's that much of an impact player on this offense. And Howie Roseman, in all of his brilliance, this is a convenience pick for them. This is just a fun. I can do whatever I want. You know, like, I can take Michael Jordan if I want to. And that's what he's getting. He's getting the Michael Jordan of this draft. I think we're going to look back in 5 years and be like, oh, Bijan Robinson slipped all the way to 10. What a crime that was. There were 9 teams in front of the Eagles that should have taken him. He's going to Philly, man. Bijan Robinson is a Philadelphia Eagle, and that dude is going to make what Breece Hall did before he got hurt look like child's play.
Easy.
All right,
if he lands,
stuff notwithstanding, I think this is a great pick, and I agree with Nate. I wouldn't bet against this happening if he's there.
No,
I think, and I definitely want to watch a lot of Eagles football if that offense is Hurts,
right,
Robinson, and Brown and Smith and Goddard. Like, what are you going to do other than watch them score 45 to 52 points on you? Like, that's just
every week
really fun.
Yeah.
And the thing with these running backs is, yes, like, well, obviously we know that they're getting faded in the NFL a little bit, but these pass catching running backs, they're so valuable for what they can do. They spread the field out. Like, look what Austin Eckler does for that Chargers offense when they get inside the 20. It's just electricity that you can't guard everyone out there. So Bijan Robinson, I like this pick here at 10, Nate. Scott, over to you to the Titans, who they need a lot of help on the offensive side of the ball. They stripped the offensive line down. They have barely any receivers outside of Treylon Burks, who I still have questions about. And it's Derrick Henry and a little bit of a mess at quarterback as well.
Well, we'll go from the excitement of the Michael Jordan of this draft to an offensive tackle. But I think if Tennessee doesn't make a trade for quarterback, I think it's kind of a slam dunk. They go tackle here. I think if this is the way the draft plays out, I think they'll be a little surprised that all the tackles are still available. So I'm not going to sit here and say I know a lot about the offensive linemen in this draft. I'm basing this a lot, on I study a lot of mock drafts and what other people that are smarter than me with this say. And so I'm calling it as Paris Johnson Jr. from Ohio State. But I think there's a group of 3 tackles. Either any one of them could be the first tackle off the board. So that's my pick. Tennessee getting a plow for their other plow, Derrick Henry.
So we'll just call this the Tony Kukoc to stick with the Bulls references of this draft.
Cool.
Hell of a player. What's wrong with
Forrest Grant?
Great player.
Yeah. Great player, great offensive lineman. There you go.
All right. Well, we haven't had too many fantasy relevant picks here in the last couple, so I'm going to give us one here with Jackson Smith-Njigba. This is a very chalk pick. Like, this is where he's mocked to go pretty much everywhere. Yeah. And I think now the Houston Texans, they add a young wide receiver 1 to go with the quarterback here. In this case, C.J. Stroud linking back up with his college teammate. And they're taking a page here from the Bengals and the Eagles. Get a young rookie wide receiver to help develop around your young rookie quarterback and see what happens here. He missed most of this last season with that hamstring issue. I think he only played about 3 games, had only 5 receptions for Ohio State this season. However, in 2021, he outperformed Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson when they were on the field together. And what happened when they weren't on the field during that 2022 Rose Bowl thriller against Utah? Only 15 receptions, 347 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That is Jackson Smith-Njigba, folks. He is an elusive player inside and outside of the slot. I'm excited to see what he can do. And if he goes to the Texans, he's the only man in town. So I think he is going to be a great smash for fantasy in year 1. Bold take, but if he lands in the Texans and it is C.J. Stroud at quarterback, I want him over Chris Olave this year.
Can I ask a dynasty question real quick to you guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so say you're in a super flex draft, and let's say you have pick 104. And let's say what we've seen so far, including this JSN pick, plays out. Are you taking Richardson or JSN at 4?
That's going to depend on my roster construction, but take that out of it, and I'm probably taking JSN.
I'll probably take Richardson personally. I think Richardson, I mean, you're talking like a quarterback 1 overall ceiling personally. So I think I would go with Richardson. Mike, how do you feel about it? Would you be willing to go with Richardson?
I'm not a huge dynasty guy, but I would probably go with Richardson just because if he can figure it out and if they can get him there, he could be the QB1 like 6 years in a row. Like
I recently traded back from
amazing. So I feel like that's who I'd go with too. I agree with Seth on this one.
Yeah, that's where I'm leaning. I recently traded. I was the 102 and I traded back to the 104. Got an extra first rounder.
I love
in
that.
It. I got an extra first rounder and then flipped that with some players for Monroe St. Brown. So it was a good week.
Great work.
I love that fourth spot just because Bijan. And then if, let's say, somebody is wise to this and is like, no, I want Richardson at 2. Okay, fine. Then my consolation prize is either Bryce Young or CJ Stroud at 4. You know what I mean? It's good stuff. Thank you, guys.
Yes, 100%. Great question, Scott. Mike, we're back to you with the New York Jets, who should have Aaron Rodgers coming into town here very shortly. They're playing a little bit of hardball with the Packers, who have zero leverage in this situation. What do the Jets do to complement Aaron Rodgers?
Well, with that in mind, this is going to be short but sweet. They're going to take the best pass blocking offensive tackle still on the board. A lot of people have him as the best pass blocking tackle in the draft, so they're going to be very pleased if he's there, and I'm sure they're going to snap him up. Or like Scott said, it'll be one of the sort of pool of 3 or 4 tackles that everyone thinks these guys are all great. But I think it'll be Skoronski if he's there.
Okay. The great thing about Peter Skoronski is he can bounce all around this offensive line, inside, outside. So I think that's a great pick for the Jets. I think they have good offensive linemen, but they just can't stay healthy. Mekhi Becton, like case in point, guy is an absolute hoss, but when you're that big of a dude, sometimes it's hard to stay healthy. So give Aaron Rodgers a little bit of protection here, Mike. I like it. Nate, over to you and the New England Patriots, who you are very fond of the New England Patriots compared to most of us here in the fantasy industry.
And I don't know why.
It's gross.
I don't know what
gross, dude.
I don't know what happened, man. It's partially because I like Mac Jones as a prospect, and it just made me excited. In this instance, though, they're not going offense. They don't really. Belichick likes to address offense with veterans for the most part. I mean, obviously Mac Jones, Tyquan Thornton, but didn't have much of a choice with the fall of Cam Newton. But with this 14th pick, they need another corner. And if they can have 2 lockdown corners, that's going to help them immensely in what I think is one of the toughest divisions in football, the AFC East. Just look at all 4 of those teams are contenders at this point. They need a corner, and the best corner on the board right now to me is Joey Porter Jr. from Penn State. I mean,
my guy.
In a dream world, Joey Porter goes to the Steelers, right? Follows his dad's legacy, plays for the team his dad played for. As much as I would love to see it, he's not going to last that far in this draft, and Porter is going to the Patriots.
Okay, so 2 things on Joey Porter Jr. One, I love him as a player. He is a ball hawk on the defense, and he was a big part of why Penn State was ranked number 5 in the country for a long time this last season. And just a quick story on Joey Porter Sr. as well. I'm about, 8, 9 years old, and my uncle would always take us to Steeler games. We would stay in the Hilton Hotel, the same ones the Steelers would, and so we'd always be walking around trying to get autographs. And Joey Porter Jr. is about 11:30. And my uncle calls me, says, "Hey, get down here. Joey Porter, I'm having a drink with him in the bar." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then he walks out. Joey Porter Jr. walks out of the bar with my uncle. And then all of a sudden he gets recognized. Everyone's swarming him. My brother gets his autograph. My cousin gets his autograph. Who doesn't get Joey Porter Sr.'s autograph? The kid right here, the little 6 or 7-year-old me. So, a little bit of dislove for that moment of Joey Porter. But I love him coming back to the Steelers, building a legacy there. And I don't hate you forever, Joey Porter, but you did crush a kid that night. There were some tears over that.
Hey, those things happen. I'm sure he feels bad about it, though. If we could get him on the show and you guys could talk about it, he'd feel bad.
Well, and I will say, Jeff, he gives a million autographs. So now as an adult, I'm like, I don't feel bad for myself as a kid. I think
the Patriots will stay true to form and draft a terrible wide receiver in the first round.
Oh, no, I don't know.
Kayshon Boutte.
I was going to say Kayshon Boutte, or
I don't know if Kayshon Boutte's going on day 2.
He's probably day 3.
The Patriots have something to say about it. He will.
yeah, they did draft.
Line him up next to Tyquan Thornton.
Hey, Tyquan, we don't know about
easy.
Tyquan.
Yeah, easy. Still out somewhat. I mean, he could still be.
I gotta get my Patriots. I don't want to say Patriots shade because Royal Shade is in the chat and he likes the Patriots. So my Patriots Stars,
Shade is throwing shade, actually. Kicker.
It's Slade.
Yeah.
Guys, come on.
Hey, fair enough. Fair enough there, Scott. It is to you now. Do you have a pick on the offensive side of the ball here?
I do. This one's a little spicy. Might seem a little bit early, but I have the Patriots and not the Patriots. Jesus. I have the Packers taking a tight end at number 15, and which I don't think that's that crazy. The Packers take a tight end, but I've flip-flopped a little bit on who I think the number one tight end is. It was Michael Mayer from Notre Dame for quite some time, but I've been convinced. I believe one of our friends in the chat, Mr. Herms, helped in this convincing. I think they're going to go Dalton Kincaid as the first tight end off the board, going to Green Bay at 15.
I mean, Kincaid's the best tight end in this draft.
I think they need a tight end, like a star tight end, and like this is a good pick.
I love it for my Jordan Love shares that I've been hoarding it in a lot of leagues. So yeah, I think this would be a great pick. And look what he did against USC last season. It was unbelievable. Over 200 receiving yards, 13 receptions in that game. He is a different animal. And I know people are comping him to Travis Kelce. I like Nate's comp of Zach Ertz a little bit better for him. However, I think it is upside galore here. I love this pick here, Scott. I'm going to go to the Washington Commanders now, the now freed or soon to be freed of Dan Snyder Washington Commanders. And I think they're going to make a very smart pick here. They're going to take Deontay Banks out of Maryland. And listen, this team has one of the best front fours in the league. Their defense should have been vicious this last season, but they weren't because they had no damn secondary. Deontay Banks, the size is a little bit questionable at times. I know people are concerned about that. But to me, he's a jack of all, master of none, and he's a bit of a playmaker. If you have a tolerance for a guy who might sometimes jump a route and get burned because he's like a Trayvon Diggs type playmaker, that's Deontay Banks. Love him, hate him. I know he's a bit controversial, but I like him to shore up that Washington secondary here in the mid-first round. Mike, back to you.
Well, I got scared after Scott took a tight end off the board, and I ruined two teams' first round. I had Pittsburgh here, and I was like, I want to take Nolan Smith. I know that might not be what the expert mocks are saying, but I just love the idea of Steelers taking like just a freakishly gifted linebacker that just feels like them. But I thought I could wait till 21, looking at where he was going, like the experts were saying. So like, oh, this is great. I'll trade with the Chargers because I want them to take Michael Mayer, and I'm afraid that Seattle may take him right in front of them. So I will jump up for a 5th round next year. I just make this stuff up on the fly. And I took Michael Mayer for the Chargers, and I traded Pittsburgh back to 21 and immediately got burned. Nate?
You were so mad at me when I made my pick.
I was chagrined.
You were chagrined.
I was crestfallen. I wasn't mad.
You were displeased. So because we talked earlier about we've got another Lions pick here at 18. This is a team that doesn't have a lot of offensive needs. They have some depth needs on offense they can address later in the draft. And there's still some guys floating around in free agency they could pick up to address the depth. Maybe there's some trades, but that's not happening in this draft. In this draft at 18, the Lions are going to take Nolan Smith out of Georgia because, dude, Nolan Smith and Aiden Hutchinson together blitzing quarterbacks, like this is a team that's going to compete for the NFC North, plain and simple. This is a team that we're going to see. I wouldn't be surprised to see them surprise everyone but me and get to the NFC Championship. They'll lose to Philly, of course. We all know that. But all they really need to do, dude, their biggest weakness was their pass rush last season. And now they have addressed pass coverage, which allows more time for the pass rush. And then you've got Hutchinson and Nolan Smith. You run them off on opposite sides. Quarterbacks are screwed.
He's going to stay as an edge guy in the NFL. Like I feel like he's going to be like Jamal Adams, isn't he? Like a big safety that can do anything. He could guard a wide receiver or blitz.
Yeah, we're going to see. I don't know what we're going to see with him because he is such an athletic freak. He could bounce outside to the outside linebacker. He could stay where he's at. I'm excited to see it. Quick question for you guys. Who are you taking for the NFC North right now? The Lions favored at plus 150. I like the Packers coming in at plus 310, but I am a Jordan Love homer here. Mike, where would you lean? Your Chicago Bears, unfortunately, are last in the odds, plus 475.
I think it's going to be the Lions. And then I guess my heart wants it to be the Bears and then the Vikings. I mean, the Vikings were so not, am I going to get yelled at on the ticker here in a second? They were like the least good 13-4 team ever. I'm sorry. Like,
yes.
Maybe they were.
There was a Steelers team that was close to that record.
They're obviously by no means guaranteed to win the division. I don't think they're going to. I'm not even sure they're going to take second. Like, I think Green Bay is going to finish last again. I am from Chicago. Like, I think I'm duty bound to say that regardless of what they look like. But I feel like this year it's as accurate as it's been in 25 years of prediction. Like,
I think Detroit, it's really weird to say this.
And then either Chicago, Minnesota, and then the Green Bay Packers, I'm sorry to say, Seth. Finishing last. The paucity of superstars is the problem.
I think Detroit runs away with the division.
Which
is weird, really weird to say, but I think that they win it pretty handily.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go from the NFC North down to the NFC South, which a little bit of a shit show right now. A lot of quarterbacks transitioning in that division. Scott, do you go quarterback? Tampa Bay Bucks up at number 19.
I considered it, and they are another team that could potentially trade up for a quarterback, but I kept it. So, like, 2 picks ago, I was real boring. Then I went with Dalton Kincaid. Excitement.
Yeah.
I'm going back to boring. I have Tampa Bay taking the next best offensive tackle, Broderick Jones out of Georgia. He's a little bit more, from what I've read, he's a little bit more of a project, but he might have the highest upside of the tackles in this group. So I think pick 19 is, I think that's a spot that makes sense for a player with that type of range of outcomes. I contemplated Hendon Hooker here for the Buccaneers being the next best quarterback in my opinion. But I honestly think that's a little too early for Hooker in my opinion.
Okay. I like that pick there, Scott. Another tackle off the board. We're going back to Seattle for pick number 20, where I'm going to have them taking Kalijah Kancey, defensive tackle out of Pittsburgh. Mike, with that first pick, you went with Levis, and I think that opens the door for Pete Carroll to continue to do what Pete Carroll does best, and that's build through the damn trenches, folks. I think he's going to draft Kancey here, who's been compared to Aaron Donald, but just not as strong of a defensive tackle. I think Aaron Donald would put Clancy on his butt if they went head-to-head here. But this defense is really good in the back end. Like you said, Scott, they got Warren as just a steal last season. Bobby Wagner's back in town after one season away as well. So a lot of good in this Seattle team. However, they need to generate more pressure on the defensive front. A little fun fact about Kancey is the second shortest arms at the combine measured in the last 15 years. So a little bit of a T-Rex arm situation going on there. But dude's a killer. Dude's an absolute killer. ACC Defensive Player of the Year, consensus All-American. Hey, T-Rex, I don't know if you guys saw that recent Jurassic Park, but T-Rexes are still goddamn scary at the end of the day, man.
Well, and this is important because their run defense was atrocious. This was a situation in fantasy last year where it was, okay, what running back is going up against the Seahawks this week, right? Like, this addresses a need because Kancey's a fantastic run stopper. He's a line clogger. He's the guy. Short arms are
probably an advantage in the trenches like that because that's why I like Bulgarians. That's me, by the way. Are the world's greatest weightlifters because the short arms makes that move. So all that power. I like this pick for sure for them.
All right. Now we're going back to Mike with the Pittsburgh Steelers. My Pittsburgh Steelers back on the clock. Herm's in the chat. He's also a diehard Pittsburgh Steelers fan. So please don't let us down, Mike. We've been let down so often by this franchise.
My diabolical Nolan Smith scheme fell apart. So I shifted on the fly, went back to what all the experts were saying to do, which was grab a lineman. And I grabbed Darnell Wright from Tennessee. He just seemed like to be next guy up. What I read, he's had a great his senior or junior year, final year.
Yes.
And, they described it as a light went on for the guy, and he apparently neutralized Anderson in a big, right, Will Anderson. So I was like, all right, this seems like the guy. This is he's top 5 on everyone's list, and 3 or 4 of them are already gone. So boom, Darnell Wright, welcome to the Steelers.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Team? Sorry.
No, thank you so much. And you're 100% right. Will
and
Anderson.
You have an extra 5th round for 2024. My dealings with the Chargers. So welcome.
Good. We'll need to replace Allen Robinson next year in the 5th round. So we'll use that there. Darnell Wright, he did actually have a great game against Will Anderson Jr., like you alluded to, Mike. And Will Anderson Jr. said that he was the toughest offensive tackle he faced in all of his college football career. And they really battled every single season, with Wright continuing to get better and better and better. So he might not even be at his ceiling yet. The Steelers need that line help, man. This boosts Najee Harris's stock. So get on Najee while you can in some of your leagues as well. Consider him in your best ball drafts happening now. Nate, back to you with the Baltimore Ravens, who still a little bit of a sticky situation down there in Baltimore. No Lamar Jackson signed as of yet, but maybe he gets the hint from the Hurts contract that he needs to sign some type of deal.
Did any of you see the Ian Rappaport news today about Lamar Jackson? Where apparently he was told that the franchise offered him $200 million guaranteed and he turned it down. So there's that. But this is a team that they believe they're going to have Lamar Jackson back, right? Now we're in this Todd Monken, like air raid style offense that he's going to run. They need receivers. And right now they've got Odell Beckham Jr., who is a bit part receiver at this point in his career between injuries and age. Nelson Aguilar, who I don't even know why they bothered.
Nelson, baby.
Why they bothered bringing him in. Rashad Bateman, who could or could not break out. And they've got Mark Andrews and someone I love, Isaiah Likely. They need receiver help. And the kind of receiver help they need, they've already got the smaller, quick guys that can work the middle of the field. They need Quentin Johnston.
What happened to Duvernay? Sorry.
Duvernay is unsigned right now, but he is expected to be back with the club.
I don't know. He's not a guy who moves the needle for me in this Monken offense, but Quentin Johnson is. And he's a raw prospect. And with the depth that they have, they don't have to roll him out as a wide receiver 2 immediately, because they've got guys like Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Rashad Bateman. Whether you like it or not, Odell Beckham Jr., Nelson Aguilar, he can have a little bit of time to develop, but he's that type of receiver I think that will work really well in this Monken offense. And maybe this is a pipe dream that he goes at 22, because we're seeing that teams are kind of more out on him at this point, that he's a guy who's going to be a day 2 pick. But this is also the Baltimore Ravens, and I wouldn't be shocked to see them snag Quentin Johnson with the 22nd pick. He fits the team. He fits the scheme.
Okay. Yeah. I personally I don't know. I've been lowering down on Johnston a little bit, actually. I kind of like Zay Flowers a little bit better personally at this point. But, I'm not the Ravens. I'm not Todd Monken here. He goes number 22. Scott, over to you with 23, my friend.
All right. From boring back to exciting.
Yay.
Lineman back to skill positions. So I'm going a little bit of a wide receiver run here. I got the Vikings at 23, and I'm mocking my number 2 wide receiver in this class, Jordan Addison out of USC to the Minnesota Vikings. Adam Thielen's gone. One of the knocks on Addison is size. He didn't he wasn't that great at the combine. I don't really care about that. His size, his weight's, a bit of an issue, but he's 5'11". That's not uncommon. And he's not just a primary slot guy. He had a career 57% slot rate in college, which is on the higher end. But he can play all over the field. He can play. He probably won't spend a lot of time out wide as the X, but as the flanker, off the line, slot receiver. I think he excels. His weakness is press man coverage. So I think they'll find ways to not have him up on the line being press covered. But he's a zone killer. He's a great route runner. He's NFL ready. I think after JSN, I think he's the number 2 guy, and I think the Vikings would be happy if he fell this far.
Hey, no complaints from the chat, Scott. They're all on with you as well. Addison, we loved him at Pitt with Kenny Pickett. We loved him this last year with Caleb Williams as well, working a very different role than he played in the Pittsburgh offense, playing a lot more outside, so he can play both in and outside. Excited to see.
Can I add one more little tidbit? I was listening to JJ Zacharyson and Matt Harmon. That's two pretty good minds when it comes to receivers. And one of the reasons, because a lot of people downplay, he had such a great season with Kenny Pickett at Pittsburgh, and then didn't really have that great of a season in USC. And the thinking there is that's a lot due to how he was being used. He wasn't being used properly at USC, whereas at Pitt, he was being put all over the field. And I think an NFL team is going to see that, and I like him. I like Jordan Addison a lot.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead with 24 here. Jacksonville Jaguars fans, stand up. Okay. A little Jacksonville love here.
I'm definitely a Calvin Ridley fan.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So I am shocked this player made it this far. I think he's one of the best defensive line / edge players in this draft. It's Lucas Van Ness out of Iowa. When I watched the combine drills, this was the one guy even before I knew, I said, who is that guy? That guy is like scary big and just an athletic freak. Ran a 4.58. He's 6'5", 272. He never started at Iowa, and that's like the question mark with Lucas Van Ness. He was never a starter. However, this is also Iowa, who continue to run a Navy-style offense and continue to bring their offensive coordinator back every single season, although their special teams at one point had more points scored than their offense this season. So I don't always trust Iowa. That's what I'm trying to say here. But I do trust Lucas Van Ness here. I think he likely bumps to the defensive end here. You have Josh Allen, Trayvon Walker at those outside linebacker positions, and then Lucas Van Ness. That's a scary pass rush that I think can get after the likes of Patrick Mahomes, get after the likes of Justin Herbert, and actually really contend in this AFC, a loaded AFC. Jacksonville Jaguars get a little bit better here. Lucas Van Ness, guys, number 24. Mike, back to you. Any exciting picks with you? Any fantasy relevant picks? We've seen quite a bit here in the 20s. What do you have for us with the New York Giants on the clock?
Well, I mean, to me, they're just are in desperate need of a wide receiver. So I was going to go that way. I knew going in. A lot of people probably have Flowers next. I mean, most people probably.
Guilty,
and
yes.
Certainly I went with Jalen Hyatt. But again, Flowers is certainly more polished, more NFL ready, runs more routes proficiently for sure. I feel like situationally though, Hyatt, first of all, he smoked the combine. He was the number one guy with the combine. So like, and we're upgrading guys on their physical get. Like Richardson's a great example. It's like that to me does mean something. And I think he's trainable, but mostly I think for the Giants, he's a better pick because he forces safeties. You can't crowd the box. Saquon, I think this is more a pick I think Saquon Barkley will be happier to see Hyatt than Flowers because he's going to see the space that guy creates with his presence on the field. And I mean, he had a great year. He had a great year. Like he's not like he's not like Willie Gault who just. Wow. Hey, I'm old, by the way. I just said,
dude, I get the reference.
He's
I
like
love that reference.
Who happened is like I can play football too. Like he's a talented guy too. So I think that this is the pick. If one of those two guys, they'll take one of those two guys if they're there at 25. I think, and like I just went with Hyatt because I like that he pushes the safeties back.
Okay.
I mean, I could see this happening because I think we were talking about this. Like I prefer Flowers over Hyatt in fantasy football, and it's not really close. But this is something I could easily see happening in the real NFL world because speed kills. I could easily see Hyatt going in the first round, where all us fantasy people will be like, "What?" Like we were with Kadarius Toney to this.
Yes, sir.
A couple of years ago, and I think the same pick, or at least close to it.
Right.
So yeah, I could easily see this happening.
Yep, same.
Yeah, I like it. Nate, over to you. Another NFC East team on the board, the Dallas Cowboys. They got a lot of question marks heading in with Mike McCarthy calling all the shots now.
Yeah, and I don't want them to address any of them because I hate the Cowboys with a passion, and I can't explain my dad grew up in Texas and hated the Cowboys, and he passed that hate of the Cowboys.
Wow,
on
it's
to
just
me
not
for some weird
American.
reason.
He probably hates apple pie and McDonald's too, doesn't he?
No, he loves apple pie, but you have to have a slice of cheddar cheese melted on top.
What about apple pie from McDonald's? Does he like that?
I don't know. I'd have to ask, I guess.
They don't put cheese on it, so probably
not.
What I'm hearing.
So had I not taken Bijan at 10 and he was still on the board, I feel like this is where he goes. But that's not the world we're living in this mock draft. And they have
there is a world where he goes 26, but okay.
No, there isn't. There absolutely isn't. And I agree with you, Mike. They need help on the interior of their defensive line. And plain and simple, a Jerry Jones move is to go with the best player on the board at the position that they need the most. And it's Brian Bresee from Clemson. Plain and simple. Like, I don't really have a whole lot else to say. Their defense wasn't phenomenal last season, and this gives a boost to their defensive interior.
I think Brian Bresee is one of the most interesting prospects and one of the best stories. This guy was so highly recruited coming out of high school. And then this last season, what happens? Not only does he comes back from a torn ACL his junior year, comes back this year, and then loses his sister to cancer, heartbreaking, gets a staph infection where he's battling strep throat again and again and again. So we never saw, like, Brian Bresee's best college year was his first one. That is insane to me. And now, like, we don't really know what his ceiling is because we haven't really seen him play in 2 years to his full level. But he was a beast when he finally got right here at the end of the year. This is the kid, regardless of where he lands, I'll be rooting for Brian Bresee. I love the story. So congrats to the Cowboys on what I think is a great pick here. Scott, over to you with the Buffalo Bills, pick number 27.
Yeah, back to boring. So this is a player that, at least according to everything I saw, really is kind of scattered all over the mock drafts where he's going. I've seen him top 10. I've seen him, I think, in a few, not even in round 1.
Yes.
I'm going for some DL help here. I feel like there's enough there that taking this player, Miles Murphy out of Clemson, D lineman, I think he's a first rounder, and I think the Buffalo getting him here would be, they would see a big value in that.
I'm very excited to see where Miles Murphy can go, honestly. Overall, it is a wide variance, as you said, Scott. And I am surprised you didn't go with Zay Flowers here. I think Buffalo needs a wide receiver, but Buffalo.
It's possible I forgot he was still on the board.
Fair enough. But Miles Murphy goes at number 27 for you. And guys, who's up at number 28? It was supposed to be the Cincinnati Bengals. However, I was hoping Dalton Kincaid fell here or Michael Mayer. Didn't happen that way. I think if they're going to see this board how it is now, the Bengals are going to get savvy with it. They're going to trade out of the number 28 pick, and the Tampa Bay mother effing Buccaneers trade back in, and they select Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee for this. This trade is for pick number 28 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and a star goes back to the Bengals, Devin White, who recently requested a trade. Devin White will go to the Bengals, and the Bucs will also take Akeem Davis-Gaither, who plays Devin White inside linebacker position for the Cincinnati Bengals. And look, I like Baker Mayfield as much as the next guy. I like Kyle Trask as much as the next guy. Dude threw 40 TDs his senior year of college. We haven't seen him much. However, Hendon Hooker is a guy who can do it all. 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in 11 games this season. He was efficient, brought old Rocky Top back to the top of the mountain, and also had 10 rushing touchdowns, over 1,000 yards rushing these last 2 years. And at Tampa Bay, he doesn't have to start year 1. They have Baker. They brought him in for a reason. So I think that they have a guy who can battle with Kyle Trask and probably take that starting role by 2024. Hendon Hooker, they're giving up Devin White, which I think is obviously a very valuable player to that defense. However, it doesn't look like they're going to sign him to a big deal anyways. So now they get the quarterback of the future for him. And the Bengals are smiling too. They just added another force to that defense. It got a lot of weaker. So all's good in Cincy, all good here in Tampa Bay, baby.
You know I love Hendon Hooker. You know how much I love Hendon Hooker.
Yeah.
I think the secret of how I think he could be one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in this class when we look back in 5 years. But this fit makes a lot of sense, man. Like, he can sit behind Baker, and then he can beat out Trask in 2024. And if they can hold on to Chris Godwin for a couple of seasons while Hooker's developing as a starting quarterback, like what better situation could you have? And they have Rashad White, who is to the moon as the RB1 in Tampa Bay this season.
Okay.
Well, I like this too. If this actually played out, that's a big get for the Bengals too.
Yes, it is.
I think if Hooker were 22 years old, he would have gone 10 spots higher.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you said he's
32, right?
I think
32?
they got to feel like, well, the future's better be now, or at least now-ish. Like, we can't, like, this guy better be ready sooner rather. And I think that's why the situation is great. None of those guys are real starting QBs. I mean, for lack of a better way to say it. So, like, the job is there, like, mid-season this year if he's ready. So, and I hope he is. That'd be exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. That was my one big trade for the draft. We got 3 more picks. Let's round it out here. Mike, your final pick of our 2023 NFL mock draft. New Orleans Saints are on the clock. Where are you going with this one, my friend?
Well, I wanted a defensive lineman. I wanted Miles Murphy. He got taken.
Oh.
I just grabbed Keon White, which is actually what a lot of people say is going to happen in New Orleans. They think he's going to be there and they're going to take him. So, like, and they need that help. So, yeah, I just grabbed him up. I feel like that pool of like that group of players, I was like, well, there's not anyone standing out as like a significantly better edge rusher right now on the still available. So Keon White, Georgia Tech.
All right. Pair him with Cam Jordan. They got a front over there in New Orleans. I like it, Mike. Nate, back to you. Pick number 30, Philadelphia Eagles. They're back on the clock. What do they do here with another luxury pick, if I would say so myself?
Well, this is a little bit less of a luxury pick for them. This is the pick that they earned by going to the Super Bowl. And as we talked about earlier, they have some needs on defense. Their secondary lost some people. CJ Gardner-Johnson left. They almost lost Darius Slay.
Yeah, they brought
Slay back, but they need a safety, and the best safety on the board is Brian Branch out of Alabama, and it just makes all the sense in the world that this is the route they're going to go if he's still on the board at 30.
Yeah, Brian Branch, very versatile player, can probably play that slot a little bit here as a rookie as well. So Brian Branch to the Eagles. They did lose a lot of pieces on that defensive side, so I think they get back here with Brian Branch. I like that pick. Scotty, back to you, my friend. Pick number 31, the Kansas City Chiefs. Always a wild card.
Was that the first safety off our board?
Yes, sir.
It was.
Yes,
so
sir.
One safety in the first round, and one last chance for a linebacker. Nope. This pick I made is more of the fantasy football nerd in me wanting something to happen. I don't know if this is even realistic. People can smoke me all they want, but I'm mocking Jahmyr Gibbs, running back, Alabama, to the Kansas City Chiefs at 31. The CEH that's actually good.
That's what I was just going to say.
Joining a team that we just saw Jerick McKinnon, be basically a top 3 running back over the course of the season. Obviously, Kelsey's there, but they don't have a lot in the way of competition at receiver. Targets are earned. Gibbs is a prolific receiving running back, one of the best that we've seen in a little while. So it might be a little early for Gibbs, but pick 31, which is already throwing me that pick 31 is the last pick in the draft. The first round. Thanks a lot, Dolphins. So I went with Jahmyr Gibbs. This was a little bit more of a fantasy homer call, something that I think would be really fun.
I love it, man. And like we said, like Gibbs could sneak into the back of the first round because he is that valuable pass catching running back. Mike, any thoughts on Gibbs here to the Kansas City Chiefs? Would you be in on it? Isaiah Pacheco is also a dog, but only 7th round pick.
I feel like, do you think they might take Flowers if he's there? Like
that's where I was surprised.
I mean, I forgot Zay Flowers existed.
Clearly,
we all did.
Truth be told, I would have taken Jordan Addison at 23 over Zay Flowers, but I did forget with the Buffalo pick. I didn't forget here. I knew he was there. I took Gibbs anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I could see them doing either thing, but it would not be surprising to me if they took a smallish, super talented.
I mean, like the consensus, the smart money is probably on a offensive lineman, but screw it. This is our mock draft.
I mean, hot take. I don't think Jahmyr Gibbs is still going to be available at 31. I think he might go at 29 to New Orleans.
Interesting.
I don't know. He's literally Alvin Kamara as his comp, so I don't know why they would
Exactly
Yeah,
because Alvin Kamara is going to be suspended, and we saw the drop off with Kamara last season. But again, that's just me. What do I know? I don't watch football, so.
Fair enough. Well, guys, this has been an absolute blast. I can't thank the IBT family for tuning in, supporting the channel here. So much great commentary here in the chat that I'm going to look back on. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Mike, we can't thank you enough, man. I know it's about 11:05 here on the East Coast, so thank you for staying up late with us. Absolutely. How can we best support you, our friend, as we head into another fun fantasy football season?
I may have some openings on my auction keeper league that you guys are going to need to fill. So that's how you can help me.
Okay.
We'll talk about that. We'll see. Some people are having babies and stuff. And I'm like, really? Where's
how selfish?
Where's your loyalty to the league? You're going to have a baby and start a family? All right. So in all seriousness, I need for nothing. I'd love to come back anytime. Thanks for having me. I learned a lot about how little I know about the NFL draft, it seems like. And I had a great time, as always.
Hey, man, we greatly appreciate your analysis and your energy and fun you bring to not just our channel, but everyone in the fantasy football industry. We're blessed to have someone like you in this industry who gives us so much of your time. Want to thank everyone out there one more time. If you guys are new to the channel, please give us a thumbs up on this video, subscribe, come back and hang out with us again. We have good content coming out for you multiple times a week, and this show is weekly throughout the remainder of the year. Nate, Scott, thank you guys again as well for bringing your analysis. And Kyle in the back end, our audio producer. You're always appreciated as well, guys. Have a great weekend. Try to enjoy some spring weather if we get it. I know it's been a little bit hectic lately, but enjoy it. We'll be back next week. We'll talk on some NFL draft props and lay some coin for it. Until then, guys, keep it in between.